Linda's the Chief Operating Officer of Evernote, a company that is, in my mind, a legendary billion-dollar success. And so I'm really excited to hear about all the secrets that she has. So as Chief Operating Officer, how much of your time and effort is focused on growth and marketing?
Quite a bit, actually. So, oops, this one. So my role, all COO roles are a little bit different, and my role is really everything that's customer-facing outside of the product. So marketing, partnerships, sales, account management, customer support, localization, and all of our international presence. So I spend a good chunk of my time on marketing and growth, whether it's through partnerships and strategic alliances, whether it's through really working with the customer support team to bring feedback into the product that people want to see in the next iteration, or whether it's really just focusing on pure marketing.
So at your scale now, like, what really moves the needle for you? And because of that, what do you spend most of your time on today? And how's that changed over time?
It's actually changed quite a bit. So 75% of our users are outside of the US. So I spend a huge amount of time thinking about kind of how to create a global experience for our users. But Evernote's been, we're 7 years old now, and we've been going through a lot of transformations, and we're really focusing on how do we create value in the product. Early on, we were very much focused on user growth. We're still focused on user growth and growing very quickly. We're at 150 million users now, but it took us 6 years to get the first 100 million.
Are you saying you didn't used to focus on value in the product?
We're still focused on value in the product, but basically what we're doing is we're taking the user growth and accelerating into monetization strategies and thinking about, okay, what do people actually need as far as different levels of individual usage, team usage, and that's where we reconfigured our pricing and our tiers back in April to think more about direct customer needs and how we move people through the evolution of the product.
So you're focusing more on building out sort of the team aspects of the product than you had in the past?
Correct. Team aspects, and then also thinking about monetization strategies.
What are ways in which, like, just sort of the go-to-market strategy and tactics are different today when you have this focus on teams in a way that you didn't in the past?
Right. So most of our sales within any kind of business implementation, a team implementation, actually starts with the individual users. So we have a very passionate user base that's kind of always trying to think about new ways they can bring Evernote into their company. So what we're actually focused on right now is thinking about how to empower those individual users with the information they need to either go to their teams, go to the decision makers within the organization, go to the IT department in the organization to make a business purchase decision.
So what's the secret? How do you do that? Because I think there's a lot of companies that have sort of a freemium product and they would like to make an enterprise sale out of it, and they might like to be viral behind the firewall or something like that.
Yeah, well, I think primarily you need to focus on the product itself, because if people are passionate about it, then they're going to be more motivated to do so. But the individual end user doesn't always understand what the IT department is going to care about, so we need to create plain language, very easy to understand, here's what the benefits are for a team implementation that the end user can easily sort of repeat and think about. Then at the same time, we need to supplement that with marketing directly to the IT and decision maker departments so that they're already prepared by the time that we get there.
I see. So what do I want to say? How do startups that are not as big as you, like when should they go global, and like how do they do that without the resources that you have? Like the most common case is to start in your home market and then expand. Like how is Evernote's experience different?
Right. Well, even when we were very small, we were already global. So in our first year, 50% of our users were outside of the US. Japan immediately was one of our largest markets.
Why do you think that is?
It was really just a product fit and a cultural fit. So the structure of how you could actually organize information in Evernote and the ability to search in images was something that just immediately resonated with the Japanese consumer. And so that took off without us really trying. However, that being said, I'm a big believer in thinking very carefully about how you go global, following the data and letting the customers lead you to something that's going to be a strong opportunity rather than just saying, I want to go to that market because it looks big or it looks interesting. Letting the customer data lead you where you see people automatically adopting your product is definitely a much more efficient way to expand globally. The only way you can do that, though, is if you start from day one building a global product. So we had to anticipate the different types of Android phones that are out there. We had to anticipate the different type of use cases. We had to anticipate the different type of broadband availability around the world. You couldn't just build a product that could only be used with the latest devices in Silicon Valley with people who are already tech savvy. You had to build a platform that could adapt to different customer needs, different payment options, and different types of devices.
Yeah, so how important to you is Android relative to iOS today?
They're both extremely important to us. Android is huge for us, and our Android app is
Probably more than other people, maybe.
Yeah, it's really, well, Android has been huge for us for a couple of reasons. One is it's a really, it's a great device that has strong penetration around the world, but also a big part of our global expansion was driven by partnerships with carriers and with OEMs, and a lot of that comes into the Android space. So the Android platform really helped us propel that international growth.
So how big and important of a company do you have to be to go do these handset deals?
Well, handset deals and carrier deals are a little bit different.
Okay.
I think it's really more about the brand, and that's why you need to spend a lot of time really thinking about your brand early on. So, for example, our earliest carrier partnership was with Docomo in Japan. We've been with them for 5 years, and we continue to work with them in Japan. And that was before we were a big company, but because the brand resonated and because we actually really focused on the concept of innovation, we were an attractive partner for carriers and OEMs alike.
How have you nurtured that Docomo relationship? I think when we spoke previously, you said that it's rare to have that sort of carrier relationship be as long-standing.
Yeah, I mean, having something that lasts this long is really pretty amazing in the partnership world in general, but particularly in the carrier partnership world. And I think a big part of that is constantly showing the value that you bring to their brand. So Docomo, for us, is a great association from our side because they have such strong penetration in the Japanese market. They also provide us with a lot of local knowledge and a lot of local assistance in making sure that we are meeting the needs of the customers there. At the same time, we provide them with a value-added service that their consumers feel strongly about, and we constantly survey and figure out, are people making purchasing decisions based on the fact that Evernote is a part of the Docomo offering? And the answer is usually yes. So as long as we continue to demonstrate that value and work very closely with them to show that we can bring extra value to their brand and their customers, that's how you nurture it.
I see. So when you see data from a different geo that you haven't focused on, like how do you make the decision? Like what's the threshold where you say like now we're going to invest in that geography, and then how do you go to market in that geography? How do you take that data and just jump on that?
So there's a couple of different levels of how we actually invest and look at the different markets. So first, as soon as we see the data, we start looking at customer behavior and figuring out exactly how they're using the product and what are the best use cases and chances for expansion. We look at things like smartphone penetration and other things like that to understand what the opportunity might be. Then actually the first way that we enter the market is through PR, which is a little bit different. So a lot of people don't necessarily think about that first, but there's a couple of advantages by entering through PR. First, we can really gather user stories and understand how people are using the product. We can get to understand the local use cases and the tastes and how the culture fits with the Evernote brand. But most importantly, it's actually how we find our teams. So Evernote does not believe in sending somebody from here over to another country to start an office. We try to find local, passionate talent about the brand, and that's how we actually build our office.
So is your office, are your satellite offices, are they sales offices or product? Or
across the board. So we have sales, we have marketing, we have customer support, we have some product development around the world, we have some localization around the world, we have some research and development around the world. So it varies. And then in China, we have a full operations team there where we even have servers and everything on that side. So it's across the board.
How did you make that decision to set up a sort of full stack Evernote deployment in China versus running things from somewhere else?
Well, there's a couple of things. You have a lot of, performance can be degraded if you're actually trying to go across, frankly, the Great Firewall using a service that's as data heavy as ours is. But then also it's really about transparency with the user. So we have an independent operations in China. We tend to adhere to law, so we want to make sure that people understand the servers are in China if they're using the China service. We also have an international service that does work in Chinese, both traditional and in simplified
And is that
Chinese.
equally important to like individual customers and also team customers?
Absolutely. Well, the performance issue is certainly important to everyone. Understanding that they're going to be able to, if you've got crucial notes, you want to access those as quickly as humanly possible. So performance is always number one. But transparency, privacy is very, very big for us, and we're very specific about how we handle our customers' data, which is we don't actually search their data. So we want to be as transparent as possible about the services and laws under which they operate.
So what's something that you thought would really be a home run in your tenure at Evernote that like totally didn't work out? What was surprising?
Well, I think one of the things that's very interesting for us is when we look at payments and payment acceptance. So we want to make it as easy as possible for people to pay around the world.
Yeah.
And sometimes implementing those different types of payment methods can be quite a challenge, and they may not necessarily be as big as you want them to be. So you really need to think very carefully about how you actually implement your payments, and you're investing in the right types of payments and payment methods that are actually going to reach the customers that you want. So we've tested some kiosk payments. We've tested some other types of payments for emerging markets.
What's a kiosk payment?
So in some markets, for example, it's a very cash-based society. It's not necessarily, they don't have international credit cards or anything like that. So we've experimented with both retail presence of just cards where you can purchase Evernote, as well as being able to pay through an ATM or a kiosk, say in Indonesia. And some of those haven't necessarily taken as much traction as we would like. So we're focusing on more scalable payment methods that make sense across the board. We'll still continue to test and use new payment methods, but you really want to think about, as you're building your infrastructure, the right way to kind of figure out those.
What's another sort of creative payment method that's not just like, a different country's credit card system that is counterintuitive that most of us wouldn't think of that has worked out really well for you that's surprising?
Well, it's not necessarily counterintuitive, but for example, we do some work with PayPal, and that has a really good retention rate for us, which has been great globally. We're going to be looking at other sort of bank transfer payment methods and things like that that are really, really important. And then it's, for us, getting recurring payments put into place is also extremely important, and it's quite a challenge. It takes a lot of work in certain countries to get recurring payments up and running. So those are other things that we're looking at as well.
Got it. So we just have like about 3 minutes left now, and I want to learn a little bit more about your sort of team product efforts and how your marketing engine feeds, I guess, what amount. I guess now that you have like a sales team, how does sort of marketing to bring in direct customers, how's that different now when you have salespeople?
So our sales team is still fairly small. We do a lot of self-service sales of even our business and teams product. And we try to be as consultative as possible. So we don't have a traditional sales structure. We don't have a very large sales team. It's entirely inside sales, so we're not doing any cold calling at all. And it's basically through lead generation that comes from marketing and from word of mouth, which is still one of our largest sources of growth. And then that gets fed into the overall funnel for our business and teams product. Still, most of our teams product adoption comes from individual users first. So we haven't focused as much on external coming in directly for business, and more about growing the existing individual user base into the team space.
So what is the profile of an organization that has like few Evernote users? Like when do you know that's a good candidate for a team sale?
Well, it varies. So what we do know is there's a lot of very specific use cases. So one of the challenges with Evernote is you can use it for anything.
Yeah.
So you tend to, you can very quickly in marketing get sucked into the concept of, oh, wow, well, we can tell this person how to use it this way and this person how to use it this way, and you spread yourself too thin. So you really have to focus. So right now we're focused on 3 very specific use cases: marketing departments, sales departments, and research, which includes either investment banking or other types of research institutions. We have really, really strong user cases around those, and so we start targeting companies that have that profile and have a strong base of Evernote users, and then we start to talk to those individual users about how you can actually implement it across a team and give them specific examples in those 3 use cases.
I see. That's interesting. What's one thing that you've like brought forward from Alibaba before you were at Evernote in our last minute that has been the most important for you now?
Well, so there was one thing that was sort of already there, but then there's sort of an extension of that. Both Alibaba and Evernote have a very global product, so you don't necessarily change the product dramatically depending on the different countries. If you create a premium experience, it feels premium no matter where you are, and that makes it much easier to maintain your channel and maintain your product. I think coming from the Alibaba side, one of the things that I learned a lot about that I really did bring into the Evernote experience is kind of the importance of all the different aspects of the experience. So at Alibaba, it's a marketplace, so you've got buyers and sellers, and you're trying to create a good environment for both of them. At Evernote, it's really about the individuals and the IT departments and the decision makers and trying to create the best experience for both parties where they feel like they're actually getting a modern working experience within a business environment, but without necessarily having to jump through a bunch of hoops to do that. So it's multiple customer relationships, and then expanding that on a global scale kind of requires a lot of empathy that you really have to think from a different position.
Got it. So in our last 15 seconds, like what is something that you really want to get out there that the audience needs to know that will, so maybe a mistake that they won't have to make, or?
Well, I think one of the biggest mistakes that I've seen, and again, this comes from doing this for like 22 years on the international landscape, is you really can't just take one model and move it to the rest of the world. You really have to think from the outside in. So there is no choice today except for to be a global company. That's really just how it's going to be going forward. It's very easy to distribute your product, but don't be mistaken to think that what works in the US is going to work somewhere else and you can just transplant a team and make it happen. You have to be as local as possible in your marketing efforts, otherwise you're not going to actually connect with the customer.
I think that's super interesting that, it seemed like your local strategy seems like an offline brick and mortar business, like an Uber going to a different market, even though you're an entirely online product, and that's surprising to me.
It's extremely local.
Yeah.